Mr. President, we have a national emergency.
This is one of the things that we can shoot first and ask questions later. Normally you can't do that.
All of a sudden, these trees started moving out of the way. They parted for me. And then I came out into this opening, and there where I saw Jesus Christ.
Back in 1927, an American socialist, Norman Thomas, 6 times candidate for president on the Socialist Party ticket, said the American people would never vote for socialism. But he said under the name of liberalism, the American people will adopt every fragment of the socialist program. Is more imminent.
James Madison, in 1788, speaking to the Virginia Convention, said, "Since the general civilization of mankind, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachment of those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations."
When men were free.
End Time Prophecy News with your host, W. Dean Shook, is on the air.
Welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to everybody on the Blog Talk Radio Network, on the Spreaker Radio Network, through all of our broadcast affiliates, everyone across this country. Thank you so much for spending this short amount of time with me. I appreciate it so very much. We're going to have a discussion tonight talking about the Lord describes the last days as being like birth pangs. Well, what's that like? You women, you know exactly what I'm talking about. he says that when the end time starts, it will be as a woman in labor. What does that mean? Well, for you guys, that means that it will be just like when labor pains come to a pregnant woman. They start out far apart and a little painful. As it goes on, they increase in frequency and the pain gets more intense. As the pain gets more intense and they get closer, she gets ever closer to the birth. So it will be in the last days that when you see those things that come to pass that's mentioned in Luke and in Matthew, that's exactly what it's going to be like. You're going to see these things in those two lists come to pass. As they come to pass, they're going to be more frequent. They're going to be more painful. I've been reading some articles and some news concerning not just the election, but America's attitude during this election. And as I was doing that, I also noticed there's a change in world attitude coming up to this election. Now, I kind of put that together with the economic crisis that we're not being told about. And I'm going to share some other things with you a little bit later that we're not being told about, which was in Yemen. One of the security agents at our embassy was murdered in a drive-by shooting. I've heard a little blip or two on the news, but as you know, the news is in bed with the Obama administration, and they're not going to tell you the truth of what's going on, especially after they just lied to us about the whole thing in Libya. We're going to go through that a little bit later, too. But what I want to do is we're going to look at these birth pangs. For everybody who listens to us all the time, you've heard us cover a lot of these things for a long time. And these birth pangs are definitely increasing. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the unemployment rate and the crisis around the world, the debt crisis around the world. Our debt crisis here. Because as you know, America is the only thing that's standing in the way of this one world currency. With this one world currency, it's also going to come the mark of the beast and the one world government. Whatever you have, anything that's global, a currency is going to bring new policies, procedures, rules, regulations, and laws to govern something as important as a world currency. It seems to be the only answer. I've said this for the last year, that when this comes, that it's going to be no choice. That the world is going to run our debt crisis, our financial situation so deep into the ground, the only thing that's going to save us is going to be this one world currency. And you're going to see this come up. I guarantee it. You're going to see this come up. It's already popped its head out quite a few times, and it's ready to come out completely. Because it's like I said before, this is a situation that's been created. And then the people that created it come out and say, we are the savior. We have the answer. We are going to save you from this. Well, we're going to start a discussion in just a minute. I want to play some kudos for some friends, give you a little information about our friends at Stitcher, and we'll be right back. Whatever you do, please don't go away.
Hello? Hey, what's going on, man? Not that things around here are getting so weird. Things are so weird.
Grok.
What was that? I don't know, but can't talk to the counselors at school. Can't talk to my parents. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to turn.
Grok.
What was that?
Need help?
Maybe support, some prayer, or just someone to talk to. The CYI Worldwide Network, home of The Grok Show. A place where you can just talk and someone will listen. The Grok Show on the CYI Worldwide Network. You can now hear our program on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, Kindle Fire, and more. It's on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. You're listening to W. Dean Shook, In Time Prophecy News and Current Events. Stay tuned.
that. And before we start our conversation, I want to share something with you that for the second time in the last 6 months, probably, yesterday I was speaking on someone else's program, and I was chastised because I used the word turd. Now, this happened once before, where I got oohs and ahs because I said the word turd. Well, let me say this. There is just nothing better than being judged by a total stranger according to their own self-righteousness. Thank you so much for that. There's just nothing like that. I just wanted to share that with you. Oohs and ahs. Say the word turd and people go, what that reminds me of is, why do you worry about the speck in your brother's eye when you have a beam in your own? Remove the beam from your own eye, then worry about the speck in your brother's eye. Words to live by, huh? All right, let's enough of the personal stuff. I want to start our conversation with this. We're going to talk about this financial cliff that's coming up here first, because this has gotten to the point where we are at a place where the world, not just America, the world is saying that our only choice now is this one world currency, which is going to lay the foundation for this one world government that's prophesied in the Bible. Now, the Bible doesn't say one world government. What it says is that this beast, this Antichrist, will have control over every kindred, nation, and tongue. In order for him to do that, it's described as a one world government, a government that's united and is willing and able to be ruled by one. So I want to go through a couple little things. We're going to talk about, I want to talk about the Greek unemployment rate. Just as one example, there's many, many, many examples that I could give, but our program is just not that long. So I'm going to give one, and then I'm going to play this little clip that's going to describe the crisis that we are in here in America. Now, you know, Spain at the moment spends 42% of their gross national product, of their total worth, on government and entitlement programs. America is doing the exact same thing, the exact same number. Spain is at a point right now where they say if they don't get a bailout, they're going to collapse. Well, Greek unemployment rate has risen to 25%. 25%. Now, this is news that comes from the Associated Press just 22 hours ago. In Greece, unemployment in Greece hit a record high of 25.1% in July as the country's financial crisis continues to exact its heavy toll. All indicators are the unemployment in Greece will continue to rise. The economy has shrunk by around a fifth since the recession started in 2008. Youth unemployment, has pushed far above 50%. The economy is expected to enter a sixth year of recession next year. Now, this is a very dramatic result. The head of the research at Greece's IOBE Economic Research Foundation, the state statistics agency, said Greece's unemployment rate rose from 24.8% in June. Now, according to statisticians, that would be the same rate as Spain's in August. And now here we are in the beginning of October, and already it is above 25%. The Greece's statistical authority said 1.26 million Greeks were out of work, with more than 1,000 jobs lost every day over the past year. The worst affected, 15 to 24 age group, unemployment was 54.2%. A year before Greece's acute financial crisis broke, there were only about 364,000 registered unemployed. This country's main labor union said real unemployment is above 30% and growing. After losing access to international money markets and nearly defaulting on its mountain of debt, Greece has survived an international bailout since 2010. However, solvency comes as a harsh price. To secure and continue receiving the loans, Athens imposed tough austerity measures, slashing incomes and repeatedly increasing taxes in an attempt to get its public finance in order. Now, we need to pay attention to that. What are we trying to do here? Let me say this again. To secure and continue receiving the loans, Athens imposed tough measures, slashing income and repeatedly increasing taxes in an attempt to get its public finances in order. The government is currently in negotiation with the country's creditors over another raft of austerity measures worth $13.5 billion over the next 2 years, so it can get the next batch of bailout funds. Greece has to satisfy certain periodic conditions in order to qualify for these handouts. Without the money, Greece won't be able to pay, and all its financial obligations may end up defaulting. The cutbacks have triggered deep resentment among a population who's reeling under nearly 3 years of austerity. During a time when unemployment is staggering Greek society, the recession is at 7%. It's at least proactive that bailout creditors are focusing on further bleeding workers and pensioners by raising taxes. The more they raise taxes, the more they go in debt. Are we learning anything here? Are we learning anything here? Yeah, let me play this little clip about what's going on in our government. This might help us understand the debt crisis that we're in. Listen to this clip.
Meet Uncle Sam. He has a lot of bills to pay. Almost $4 trillion worth every year. Uncle Sam's income is a little over $2 trillion per year. To make up the difference, the deficit, he does what most Americans do. He borrows money. When Uncle Sam takes out a loan, he calls it a bond. Bonds can be held by banks, investors, or even foreign governments. Uncle Sam has to promise to pay interest on these bonds, just as you do on any loan you take out. Ever think about paying your mortgage with your credit card? That's exactly what Uncle Sam does. He takes out new loans, new bonds, so that he can make payments on the old ones. All those loans, and especially all that interest, adds up. Right now, Uncle Sam owes about $14 trillion. To put that in perspective, $14 trillion is about the same as the national GDP, the total value of all the goods and services produced by the American economy in an entire year. It's such a huge amount of money that Uncle Sam is starting to run out of people to borrow from, and he's having trouble just paying the interest on his loans. The obvious solution would be to either cut spending or increase taxes. But if he cut spending, the people that he's spending money on would complain that they don't have money to spend, and that he was hurting the economy. If he tried to raise taxes enough to close this gap, not only would people definitely have less money to spend, he'd probably have riots on his hands. So Uncle Sam chooses the easy way to make money. Just make it. He calls up the Federal Reserve, which is our central bank, and, like magic, dollars are created and deposited in banks all around America. The problem is that the more of something there is, the less it's worth. Same goes for the US dollar. The more dollars there are, the less each one will buy. That's why commodities like gasoline, food, and gold become more expensive when Uncle Sam does his money-making magic. The commodities aren't really worth more. Your money is just worth less. That's called inflation. Remember the foreign governments that lent money to Uncle Sam? When they lent money to the American government, something interesting happened. It made the U.S. look richer and their countries look poorer. When a country looks poor compared to America, $1 of our money buys a lot of their money, so they can pay their workers only a few pennies a day. With such low labor costs, they can sell their products in America for lower prices than any American manufacturer can. The easiest way for American companies to compete is to move their factories overseas and pay their workers a few pennies a day too. This contributes to a recession. Americans lose their jobs, stop paying taxes, and start collecting government benefits like Medicaid and unemployment. This means that Uncle Sam has even less income and even more expenses. At the same time, the people who still have jobs are desperate to keep them, so they tend to do more work but not to get paid anymore. When your dollars are worth less and you're not earning more of them, that's called stagflation. And this is why Uncle Sam is in a catch-22. He can't raise taxes or cut spending without making the recession worse. And he can't have the Federal Reserve create more money without making inflation worse. For now, he can keep borrowing money, but since he can't even pay the interest on the loans he already has, it just makes his inevitable bankruptcy even worse. Whether it's in 2 months or 2 years, the day will come when Uncle Sam can no longer pay his bills. When that happens, the banks, investors, and foreign governments who are counting on that money won't be able to pay their bills. You see, just like Uncle Sam, governments, banks, and corporations don't actually have much money. Mostly, all they have is debt to each other. If one link in the debt chain stops paying, defaults, the whole thing falls apart. If investors can't pay their bills, corporations won't be able to pay their employees. If banks can't pay their bills, you won't be able to take out a loan, use a credit card, or even withdraw your savings. If foreign governments can't pay their bills, their own banks and corporations will have the same problems. That's called a global economic collapse. It's never happened before, so nobody really knows how bad it will be, how long it will last, or even how we'll eventually get out of it. The house of cards has already been built. There's no painless way to dismantle it now. All we can do is to educate each other about what's actually going on and to prepare for what may be very extraordinary circumstances.
Very extraordinary circumstances indeed. What is it when he explained that? What is it when you have to borrow money to pay on things that you've already promised? This is a Ponzi scheme. This is the same thing that Madoff went to prison for. And when it comes to explaining the problem with our economy, one of the hardest things to do is to get people to understand that we're living in an economy that's a fantasy world. It's completely and totally unsustainable. You know, as a nation, we consume far more than we produce. We spend far more than we bring in. Our debt is growing much faster than our GDP. Our entitlement programs are growing. Our retirement system is a total Ponzi scheme. The Federal Reserve's printing money as if there's no tomorrow. And in this desperate attempt to paper over all of our problems, it just gets worse. You know, but let's face it, we've all grown accustomed to this debt-fueled prosperity that we've been enjoying for a long time. For a lot of people, this feels real. But history shows us that it's simply not possible to grow your debt faster than your economy. At some point, your consumption will drop back to a level equal to your production. It has to, or you will crash. Sometimes this adjustment can be gradual. Other times it can be extremely painful. But in our case, we've been living way above our means for so long, it would take a major economic miracle to just keep our adjustment to a painful level. We're living in the largest debt-fueled prosperity bubble in the history of the world. Our unsustainable economy is going to crash and burn at some point. It has to. We cannot keep doing this. Hopefully it'll be later than sooner. I want to go over a couple of these problems and a couple of the reasons why it's the way it is. Just so that you understand, when we talk about these birth pangs and the world crash, there's some very explicit reasons why this is going to happen. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I think it's important for everybody to have a general idea. Even if you don't understand every single part of it, you're going to get a general idea of what this is and why it's the way it is, why we have to address this now. We have to stop our spending now. Most Americans don't really understand what a trade deficit is. But, this trade deficit is really at the core of our problems. And if you're somebody who listens to the national news and what they say about it, this is probably not going to make any sense to you. But because the media doesn't tell us the truth, it tells us what they want us to know. They truly do indoctrinate us, not only through the news, but through TV programs, through their programming in general. Where they're trying to make things acceptable because they say them over and over and over until finally people just start believing it because they've heard it so many times. When in actuality, there's no truth in this stuff. So basically, we buy far more stuff than the rest of the world buys from us. That's a trade deficit. We send them huge piles of our money. They send us oil that we burn in our cars, cheap plastic products that we end up throwing away. We keep doing this month after month after month. This is systematically making us poorer as a nation. In 2012, it's being projected that our trade deficit will fall somewhere between $500 billion and $600 billion. It's just like they said in the clip about our money being printed, just zapped out of nothing. At this point, the United States has a trade imbalance that's more than 7 times larger than any other nation on earth. 7 times larger. The United States runs a trade deficit of more than $8 trillion with the rest of the world, and have done so since about 1975. Instead of going out of the country, those $8 trillion could have gone to U.S. business and U.S. workers. In turn, taxes would have been paid on those $8 trillion, and our debt problems would not be nearly as dramatic as they are today. But did we do that? No, we didn't. We chose to allow tens of thousands of businesses, millions of jobs, trillions of dollars, and our national wealth to leave the country, buying these cheap products from all over the world when we should be producing ourselves. Stupid move, huh? But both political parties have been endlessly pushing the free trade agenda. They have both promised that it would bring us tremendous prosperity. Well, just take a look at our manufacturing cities today. Do they look prosperous to you? It turns out that Ross Perot was right when he warned about the giant sucking sound that would happen if NAFTA was implemented. That's exactly what happened, exactly what he said. As soon as we implemented NAFTA, we heard a giant sucking sound. It was sucking the money and the jobs right out of our country and dropping us right into the financial crisis that we're in. And still, people support NAFTA. When NAFTA was pushed through in Congress in '93, the United States had a trade surplus with Mexico of $1.6 billion. Well, by 2010, we had a trade deficit with Mexico of $61.6 billion. Now, that didn't work out so well, did it? What about opening up trade with China that they say we can't do without now? Back in '85, our trade deficit with China was approximately $6 million. for a year, for an entire year. 2011, our trade deficit with China was $295.4 billion. That was the largest trade deficit that one nation has had with another nation in the history of the world. Come on. Our trade with China is tremendously unbalanced. Today, U.S. consumers spend approximately $4 on goods and services from China for every $1 that Chinese consumers spend on goods and services from the United States. This is a huge reason why shiny new factories are going up all over China. Our blue-collar cities are turning into rioting war zones filled with unemployed people. Now, if you can believe it, the United States has actually lost more than 56,000 manufactured facilities since 2001. And until we fix this trade deficit, we're going to continue to bleed factories and jobs, national wealth at an astonishing pace until we crash. That's what we're going to do. We're going to just keep doing it until we absolutely crash. Now, these people in Washington who claim to be professional politicians, when President Obama and Congress says, well, you know, the regular people just don't understand these things because they're not professional politicians. Ooh, we're too stupid to understand. We don't know about these things. Well, apparently they don't either, because look at the hole they're grinding us into. As we all know, another big one is our national debt. Oh my goodness, it's being projected that U.S. GDP will grow at a rate of 2.2% this year. The problem is that our federal budget deficit will be somewhere around 7% this year. Now, how does that work? If we grow at 2.2% and our budget deficit is 7%, I learned this kind of math in, second grade, third grade? I mean, come on. This is simple stuff here. And it doesn't matter what the news or what the government tells you. Numbers don't lie. If you're growing at 2.2% and you have a deficit growing at 7%, stop spending. You know, President Obama has recently, in the last day or two, has just come out and said he has tried to make all of these cuts, and he's tried to make historic cuts that would cut our deficit, and the Republicans just won't go along with it. They refuse to deal on it. That's because along with his cuts come tax hikes. You don't look, when your GDP is only growing at 2% and your deficit is 7%, what happened in the story that I just read from Greece? They're raising their taxes, trying to get out of it, and it's digging them in deeper. It's not helping. All you have to do is look and see what your neighbor's doing and not working, and say, well, I'm not going to do that. It's not working for them. Why would I do that? Instead, our government is saying, well, look, they're raising their taxes. Well, yeah, they're going deeper in debt. Well, here, how about if we try it? Really? Professional politicians, are you? With each passing day, we're losing ground. No other nation on earth that has been able to round up debt like this and survive, and neither will we. This doesn't work. All of the government debt is just about the only thing holding up our economy at this point. Barack Obama has been in the White House. The U.S. national debt has increased by about $5.5 trillion. And this coming from a man who said he would cut it in half in his first term. He spent a lot of money on incredibly stupid stuff. But it still gets into the pockets of average Americans that in turn spend it on food and gas and mortgage payments. Now, if we could go back in time and suck that $5.5 trillion of extra spending out of the economy, we'd be in a horrible economic depression right now. But that does not mean that borrowing and spending all of that money was the right thing to do. We've stolen it from our children and our grandchildren. And we're going to stick them with the bill. How moral is this? This is, my friends, a national disgrace. Yet we continue to do it because we can't help ourselves. We're ruining the future of this nation in order to make the present day more pleasant for ourselves. It's going to hurt to get out of this. Nobody wants to make the sacrifice. Thank you, Mr. Obama, for doubling our debt in your first term. And now on the campaign trail, you're giving us more of the same. We're completely addicted to debt, and we can't stop. We know that we're destroying the future of the United States, but we have absolutely no self-discipline. We're now at the end of Obama's first term. The government will have accumulated more debt during those 4 years than it did from the time of George Washington took office to the time George W. Bush took office. And yet, he has the audacity to stand on stage and give speeches and saying he can fix the economy. And look what he's done. But, you know, most people seem fine with that. Are y'all fine with that? Most Americans don't even really know why this is happening. Most don't really seem to be concerned about finding out. They just want the good times to roll. Let the good times roll, baby. That's people's attitude. Let the good times roll. Well, sadly, the truth is that our financial system is designed to create government debt. It's one of the primary purposes of the Federal Reserve System. At this point, the U.S. national debt is more than 5,000 times larger than it was when the Federal Reserve was first created in 1913. I guess you could say the Federal Reserve is doing a good job of what it was designed to do. Until we change the system, things are going to continue to get worse until the entire system collapses. We cannot sustain this. A collapse is the end result. Boston University Lawrence Kodakoff is warning that we are basically facing financial Armageddon if something is not done. He speaks on the financial gap, which he defines as the present value difference between projected future spending and revenue. His calculations have led him to the conclusion that the United States is facing a fiscal gap of $222 trillion in the years ahead. What about entitlements? Every society needs a safety net. I am not against entitlements. But we're getting to the point where we're going to be more Americans in the safety net than there are supporting it. Back in '83, less than 30% of all Americans lived in homes where at least one person received financial assistance from the federal government. Today, that number is up to an all-time record of 49%. Remember when Mitt Romney came out and said 47% of people are on the government? He was wrong. And I said this before. It's not 47%. It's 49%. Most people don't believe me when I tell them that more than 100 million Americans are enrolled in at least one welfare program ran by the federal government right now. That does not even count Social Security and Medicare. Overall, there's nearly 80 different means-tested welfare programs that the federal government is currently running. The biggest financial burdens of Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, all three are on a course to become completely and totally unsustainable. No matter what people might tell you, the numbers don't lie. Let me give you an example. The number of Americans on Medicaid soared from 34 million in 2000 to 54 million in 2011. It's being projected that Obamacare will add 16 million more Americans to the Medicaid rolls. Ouch! Okay, what about Medicare? Medicare is even more frightening. It's being projected the number of Americans on Medicare will grow from 50.7 million in 2012 to 73.2 million in 2025. How in the world can we afford that? At this point, Medicare is facing unfunded liabilities of more than $38 trillion over the next 75 years. That comes to approximately 328,000 for each and every household in the United States. That's going to be the largest wealth distribution ever. Approximately 56 million Americans are collecting Social Security benefits. By 2035, the number is projected to soar to a whopping 91 million. Overall, the Social Security system is facing a $134 trillion shortfall over the next 75 years. Where are we going to get that money? What is our total debt? Of course, the national debt is not only our problem. All over the country, there are state and local governments that are on the verge of insolvency. Corporations and financial institutions are leveraged like crazy. And of course, consumers have absolutely gorged on debt over the past several decades. And the Obama administration at the moment is encouraging everyone to do more. He's telling everyone to borrow money to go to college while college rates are soaring. And they keep going up even though he comes out with these speeches saying, we're going to lower these prices of college tuition. That's our goal. Yet they want to keep loaning money for everybody to go to college while these college tuition rates are skyrocketing. The good news that our GDP is more than 12 times larger than it was 40 years ago. The bad news is the total number of debt in our country is more than 30 times larger than it was 40 years ago. There's more numbers that don't lie. This is something that can't go on forever. We simply cannot keep accumulating debt faster than our economy is growing. And nobody knows exactly when the quote-unquote adjustment is coming. But at some point, it has to come. The Federal Reserve has been attempting to monetize our economic problems by printing gigantic mountains of money that are backed by nothing. They zap it out of thin air. The Federal Reserve is the very heart of our economy's problems. Most Americans don't even know this. It was the Federal Reserve that created the conditions for the housing bubble. It was the Federal Reserve that badly mismanaged the response that burst the bubble. The Federal Reserve decides how much money will be printed and what our interest rates will be. This is not a federal agency. This is privately owned. It lends out trillions of dollars to banks that they like. Federal Reserve picks winners and losers. Most of the time, it means good things for big Wall Street banks and bad things for the rest of us. In a desperate attempt to keep our unsustained financial system from collapsing, the Federal Reserve has decided to start printing unprecedented amounts of money. Just start printing it up, boys, and send it out there. Well, I've talked a little bit about this quantitative easing. They've just started another one. They admit it's not going to do anything to create jobs or build the economy. But yet they're printing all of this money for this quantitative easing and they're passing it out like candy. They're just saying, don't worry about it. We'll print more. Well, it's just like they said in that clip, that when the dollar goes down in value, precious metals go up. What's gold today? It's near $1,900 an ounce, and it's still going up. Why? Because the value of the dollar is still going down. So what's the point of this little discussion that we're having? Because when our economy crashes, just like it's crashing in Spain, just like it's crashing in Greece, just like many other countries where their economies are crashing, they're already saying it. They're saying that it's the difference in monetary value from country to country that's creating these problems. Remember in the clip, what did he say? He said that because the dollar is worth more than other currencies, it buys more goods from other countries. So they're able to pay their workers and their employees much, much less. They produce goods that we used to produce at a fraction of the cost. We could never in America compete with 65-cent hour labor. We could never compete with that. Now, it's true they're using substandard materials in most cases. They're using cheap labor, 50, 60, 65 cents an hour, 12-hour days, producing the goods that are just crap. They're garbage because they're unskilled laborers that are being forced to work just to buy a little pittance of food and try to survive. We can't compete with that. So this deficit that we have, this trade deficit, is increasing all of the time. We should have never opened up this kind of trade with China. This is devastating us. China is keeping the value of their money low on purpose because it's making them rich and it's bleeding us dry. When they come together, and they will come together and they will say the only way to fix this is the same thing that the BRIC countries are saying now. We need a one world currency. We need a currency that has equal value around the world. And they're asking the UN, much like President Obama does, asking the UN to be the one to facilitate this. Oh, my goodness. All right, I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, we are going to talk about the United Nations briefly, about some new plans for the United Nations to step up here. Let me take this short break, and we'll be right back. Don't go away.
You can now hear our program on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, Kindle Fire, and more. It's on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio.
Isn't that wonderful? Georgia Red. Thank you so much, John, for that music he sent me. That's a clip from his third album. And you can find Georgia Red's music. Go to Amazon.com. Just look up Georgia Red. He's got his third album out there. Also, when I play Do You Know Him? That's also Georgia Red. Praying for the Nation, that's also Georgia Red. I love that song so much, Praying for the Nation. I'll tell you what, during our next break, I'll play Praying for the Nation for you because it really encompasses everything we should be doing when it comes to praying for our country, praying for each other. All right, I want to take a brief look at the UN. Now, a lot of people talk about this kind of thing, but let me tell you this, that when it comes to the UN has been involved in this kind of thing for a long time. They started a long time ago with Agenda 21, recently coming out with the new UN Constitution, excuse me, which is the judicial part of Agenda 21. And the law of the sea, and they've added all these other things. Now, President Obama has been signing executive orders recently, which enforce Agenda 21, the new UN Constitution, in our country, because they are step by step, death by 1,000 cuts, implementing everything that's in Agenda 21 and this new UN Constitution into America, because he's trying to blend us in there. You know, it's just in my opening intro is what's said there is absolutely true, that we will never vote for communism or socialism, but we will adopt every aspect of it through liberalism, which is exactly what we're doing. We're adopting every aspect of this global environment, becoming global, where we are going to lose our sovereignty as a country and be blended in with the rest of the world. So instead of bringing the rest of the world up to our standards, they're trying to bring us down to the rest of the world's standards and make us all one, so that we can truly become the vision of the 10 toes in the book of Daniel. Make no mistake, my friends, this is exactly what's happening. And I want to talk about, just briefly, about the United Nations. Now, after we talk about the United Nations, I also think that there's a need to tell you some news that most of you probably don't know about another murder at our embassy in Yemen that the media is not telling you about. Surprised? Well, I'm not. And I also have a congressional hearing clip that's going to go with that, both from Libya and from what's just happened in Yemen. Only because this is news you need to hear, and it's just another little tidbit of proof that they're not telling us the truth. There is no truth in these people. Now, on October 14th, 2009, Lord Christopher Monckton, former science advisor to British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, delivered a scathing report of the concept of human-caused global warming at Bethel University at St. Paul, Minnesota. Now, during his presentation, Lord Monckton focused on the UN climate treaty that was being proposed. It was a proposal at the time for the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Copenhagen. And here's what he warned. He said, I read the treaty, and what it says is this, that a world government is going to be created. The world government actually appears as the first of three purposes of this new entity. The second purpose is the transfer of wealth from the countries of the West to third world countries. The third purpose of this new entity, this government, is enforcement. All of these have been achieved. The enforcement is the new UN Constitution that came out a year or so ago. No, it hasn't even been a year. And what about the transfer of wealth? When President Obama passed out these bailouts, I played clips. I did a whole program on this. I played the clips where Geithner and others refused to say where that money went. Well, in this congressional hearing, they were saying this bailout money was sent to other countries, not one country, countries plural. Our tax dollars in the form of a bailout was going around the world to these other countries. We're bailing out other banks in other countries while we're suffering and going down ourselves. This is a transfer of wealth from countries of the West to third world countries. The purpose of this new entity, this new government, not just any governments. They want to take the governments from the wealthiest. That's us, or was, because they're about to impose a communist world government that covers the entire world. You know, at the UN's Rio 20 Earth Summit on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in June of 2012, the world government advocates were pushing even grander schemes. Lord Monckton, who leads the policy unit of the UK Independent Party and its chief policy advisor to the Washington, D.C.-based Science and Public Policy Institute, told the New Americans Alex Newman they were still effectively talking about a mechanization of getting up a global government so they could shut down the West, shut down democracy, and bring freedom to an end worldwide. That's what they said. Is this merely the rantings of a madman? Well, that's what the usual suspects, like people at the Huffington Post and MSNBC and other organs of the liberal left corporate media, would have us believe. This is a climate change denier, a moonbat, a conspiracy wacko. That's what they're saying about people like me who bring this stuff up and tell you the truth. They're saying, well, that's just conspiracy. This is not conspiracy. And it's the same response. It's been greeted everyone, everywhere, who's dared to even criticize the UN or to say anything about their faults and abuses or to point out the danger of a UN that's evolving into an actual world government with real teeth and real enforcement powers. You know, very influential Americans, as well as foreign leaders in politics and media and academia, have been advocating and blatantly and openly, as well as indirectly, for transforming the United Nations system into a full-blown world government. They've begun actual implementation. This is no longer hypothetical. The UN and its affiliate institutions were introducing legislation, executive and judicial powers, including taxing. We covered that. Policies, military powers. It's already begun. It's already happening. This is not some future prediction. And it's happening with the approval and encouragement and funding of globalists in our own government, both Republican and Democrats. Remember Walter Cronkite, the CBS anchorman and broadcast icon, referred to the most trusted man in America? What he said in 1999 seems to many of us that if we are to avoid the eventual catastrophic world conflict, we must strengthen the United Nations as a first step toward a world government with a legislature, executive, and judiciary, and police to enforce the international laws and keep the peace. To do that, of course, we Americans will have to yield up some of our sovereignty. It would take a lot of courage, a lot of faith in the new world order. We cannot defer this responsibility to prosperity. Democracy and civilization itself is at stake. Well, yeah, because it's going to be gone. He said within the next few years, we must change the basic structure of our global community for the present system of war to a new system governed by a democratic UN federation. UN federation. Now, when I say UN federation, what does that bring to mind? That brings to mind Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream when he came down to the 10 toes. Because, my friends, these 10 toes that we have talked about many times over and over are a 10-zone nation, whatever it's going to be, federation. That's exactly what we've been talking about, and this is Bible prophecy coming to pass as we speak. Strobe Talbot may not be as well known as Uncle Walter Cronkite, but he has considerable influence among political elites. He's a former Soviet expert, correspondent for Time magazine, Soviet KGB defector Sergei, what was his last name? I don't remember his last name. Sergei Tretikov or something like that. He claimed that Talbot was actually an extremely valuable intelligence source for Russian intelligence. Yeah. And Deputy Secretary of the State for President Clinton. Talbot now serves as president of a very influential think tank, the Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C. I'm sure you've heard of them. What a wonderful group they are. In a highly acclaimed essay he penned for the Time magazine in 1992 entitled The Birth of the Global Nation. Here's what he said. In 1795, philosopher Immanuel Kant advocated a peaceful league of democracies, but it's taken the events in our own wondrous and terrible century to cinch the case for world government. Federalism has already proved the most successful of all political experiments. Organizations like the World Federalist Association have been for decades advocating its basics for a global government. Gideon Rockman, an enthusiast one-worlder and leading economic opinionator, very influential with the Financial Times, author of Open End on December 8, 2008, entitled, and this is what he wrote, it's called, And Now for World Government. It seems everything is in place for the first time since Homo sapiens began to doodle on cave walls. There's an argument, an opportunity, and a means to make serious steps toward this world government, which they plan on doing. A world government would involve much more than cooperation between nations. It'd be an entity with state-like characteristics, backed by a body of laws. This body of laws, my friends, is starting with policies, procedures, rules, regulations, and laws that have to be in place when you have a one world currency. This is going to be the foundation of this body of laws. The European Union has already set up a continental government for 27 countries, which could be a model. The EU has a Supreme Court, has its own currency, has thousands of pages of laws, a large civil service, and the ability to deploy military anywhere in the world as a group from these 27 countries. And there are blatant calls for empowering the UN to do the same thing. And they're so bold that they're hiding it right in plain sight. You know, a lot of the superstructure and infrastructure for a physical edifice of a world government have already been built. The United Nations has been doing this for a long time. This is not something new. Take, for instance, the UN's World Health Organization. and its huge Geneva headquarters. It also has 6 huge regional offices in Africa, in the Congo, in the Americas, Washington, D.C., in Europe, in Copenhagen, Denmark, in the Mediterranean, in Egypt, in Asia, India, Delhi, the Philippines. This is not some little one day we'll do this. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization is located in a huge, gleaming palace of glass and marble, just a short walk from the Colosseum in Rome. It also has regional offices in Ghana, Chile, Thailand, Egypt, Hungary. Has offices in Samoa, Barbados, Tunisia, Turkey, Ethiopia, Panama, Geneva, Washington, D.C., New York, Brussels, Yokohama. This is global. And the story is the same for UNESCO. We talked about them just the other day, which besides boasting a practical office and world headquarters in Paris called the World Heritage Center, it also has field offices, cluster offices, national offices, regional bureaus, liaison offices, more than 50 countries throughout the world. And this same pattern is repeated for many other UN agencies. And besides putting in place this vast civil service of administrators and bureaucrats to run the planned world government, this expanding UN system has created this huge global what do you call it? It's a global government. They're setting it up in place. It's everywhere now. It has NGOs that benefit from UN presence, and everybody's benefiting from it. That's why they're doing it. Everybody's getting a benefit. You know, greed. For those of you who are listening in America, across this country, you know how the whole greed thing is taking over. And let me just say this, that you know, I'm broadcasting from the beautiful state of Oregon. Woo-hoo! And, you know, in the large metropolitan areas here in the state of Oregon, auto mechanics and auto mechanic shops now charge up to $100 to diagnose the problem with your car. They're not going to fix anything for that. All they're going to do is tell you what the problem is, and they're going to charge you $100 to do that. Some places will say that if you decide to let us fix it, we'll put that $100 toward the bill. Other places say, no, that's separate from the bill. It's $100 for us to diagnose your problem. If your car is spitting and sputtering and you limp it into the shop, they're going to charge you $100 whether you get it fixed there or not. Now tell me that's not ripe for corruption and fraud, because what's going to happen? You're going to pay $100, and they're going to say, well, it's going to cost you $700 to fix it. Are you going to say, I'll take it somewhere else then and pay another $100 to have it diagnosed again? You can't go in and say, oh, I just had it diagnosed for $100. Here's what they said is wrong. Because they're going to say, well, we have to diagnose it. How do we know they were right? It's going to cost you another $100. Then they're going to give you another inflated price. You can't go from shop to shop to shop to shop and pay $100 a whack just to have it diagnosed over and over. They've really got you by the short hairs. They charge you $100. That's a chunk of change to have your car diagnosed. They got you by the short hairs. It's greed. And the ones that say they will not apply it to the bill, that's really greed. Whatever happened to the days when you could take it in there and somebody would say, well, you know, you need the clutch replaced, a new throwout bearing, and probably some U-joints. It's going to cost you this. And you can decide then if you want to do it or not. Those days are long gone. It used to just be a part of the service. greed is taking over. And the UN, it's growing its organizational footprint in most visible ways throughout the third world, especially, where offices of UN agencies, the IMF, the World Bank, political and economical landscape, and UN tracks, UN tent cities, UN blue-helmeted peacekeepers, UN civilian staffs. It's UN, everything around the world. They're slowly stepping into all of this, death by 1,000 cuts. This gradual development of the UN from an international organization into a world government was planned from the world's beginning in 1945. One of the UN's architects of the UN founding conference in San Francisco was John Foster Dulles, who served as Secretary of State from 53 to 59. In his 1950 book, War and Peace, Dulles, a committed one-worlder and founder of a One World Council of Foreign Relations, wrote of the then 5-year-old UN that the United Nations represents not a final stage in the development of world order, but only a primitive stage. Therefore, its primary task is to create the conditions which will make possible a more highly developed organization. They planned this from the beginning. Have you noticed the world chaos? Do you remember when we talked about this in the Bible in our last program, where we said that nations would be in distress? I mean, how prominent was that when we brought that up out of the book of Luke, that nations would be in distress? In fact, let's take a look at this real quick. Let's look at I was going to look at Luke. Maybe we'll look at Matthew, although Luke is very much just as incredibly prominent as Matthew is. It's not strange. Well, here, let's just see what it says in chapter 24 of Matthew. It says, "Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you not be troubled, for these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet." So when we see these things, it doesn't mean the end. These are the birth pangs. "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." I've talked about this many times. What does that mean? Are they being redundant when they say that? When God says that, is he being redundant to say that it will be nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom? Is that redundancy? No. And let me tell you why. Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. The kingdoms are the ruling powers. The nation are the peoples. So what he's saying here is there will be, for nations shall rise against nation, people against people, and kingdom against kingdom, government against government, where the people don't necessarily agree with what the government's doing. It's not nation against nation. It's kingdom against kingdom. It's power against power. It's government against government. We see that in Iran today, where the people of Iran do not necessarily support. Remember, we had an uprising not long ago in Iran. There were protests in the street. And what happened? The Iranian government moved in and squelched all of that. Well, you didn't see the U.S. moving in like they did in Libya or in Egypt or in Yemen or in any of these other places. They stood back and just let it be punched down. Why? Why was it so important that we go into Libya when we went into Libya? And they said it's in our interest to do this. And boom, we were right there supporting the overthrow in Libya and the overthrow in Egypt. But when they tried to overthrow Iran, The U.S. stood back and said, no, we're not having any part of that. Why? This is kingdom against kingdom, government against government, not nation against nation. It says, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. All of these are the beginnings of sorrow. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, shall kill you, and you shall be hated for all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Many false prophets shall rise and deceive many. Joel Osteen. Rick Warren. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Watched the news lately? The love of many shall wax cold. But he that endureth until the end, the same shall be saved. And the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. Then shall the end come. For when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Who readeth, let him understand. Then let him which is in Judea flee into the mountains. This is when the beginning of the Armageddon. So we see all of these things coming about. Well, what's going on? I'm going to change gears here. I told you I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this UN thing. But I wanted to illustrate the fact that economies around the world are collapsing. The UN is already set up to do this. It's in motion now. This world government is in motion now. And I want to make sure that we understand how we are being lied to about this whole thing. And I'm going to do this by first giving you some news that's current. Before I do this, I want to play you a clip. You know, the Obama administration, when Ambassador Stevens was killed in Libya, the Obama administration came out and said it was because of this clip. The media came out immediately and said it was because of this clip. And for weeks afterwards, even when the truth came out, the media is still saying very casually, well, and now we have a story about the uprising in the Middle East. And this uprising in the Middle East, you know, the one that was caused by the movie? Well, it wasn't caused by any movie. And I have a clip here of a congressional hearing. I want you to hear this clip. This is a recording from a congressional hearing about this very thing and about Susan Rice and the Obama administration lying to us about this. A full-out, blatant lie. Now, this is a live recording from a congressional hearing, and this is Representative Trey Gowdy who's speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, for almost a year, there was an escalating pattern of violence directed towards the United States and other Western targets in Libya. Attacks on the consulate in Benghazi, attacks and assassination attempts on the British ambassador, attacks on the International Red Cross, attacks on courthouses, judges assassinated, culminating on September the 11th, and the murder of 4 Americans, including our ambassador to Libya. Before those 4 murders, Mr. Chairman, just a few weeks before that, our embassy in Libya said this to the Department of State: the security condition in Libya remains unpredictable, volatile, and violent. So, Mr. Chairman, despite what would appear to any reasonably objective observer as an escalating pattern of violence, including sophistication, coordination, and management, this administration blamed the murder of our ambassador and 3 others on a video. Don't take my word for it, Mr. Chairman. Let's look at what Ambassador Rice herself said. Our current assessment is that what happened in Benghazi was, quote, in fact, initially a spontaneous reaction. I don't know what the phrase in fact means in diplomatic legalese. I can tell you what it means in a courtroom, Mr. Chairman. It means it's a fact. And she went on national television and she said, not as this ambassador has said, that I'm not going to speculate, that I've got to get all the information. She said, in fact, this was a spontaneous reaction to what had just transpired hours before in Cairo, almost a copycat of the demonstrations against our facility in Cairo, which were prompted, of course, Mr. Chairman, by a video, is what she said. And then she proceeds to say the attack was spontaneous. I can think of few things, Mr. Chairman, more antithetical to spontaneity than a 12-month-long prologue of violence in Libya. And then she said she relied solely and squarely on the information the intelligence community provided. Mr. Chairman, I would like to have another hearing where we can ask Ambassador Rice under oath, who told you what when? You're going to blame the intelligence committee? You come before this committee and you tell us who told you it was a video. Who in the intelligence community said it? Who in the diplomatic community blamed this on a video? And then we move to Jay Carney, who's the spokesperson for the leader of the free world. And this is what he said, Mr. Chairman. I'm saying based on information that our initial information that includes all information, we saw no evidence to back up claims by others that this was a pre-planned or premeditated attack. What we saw was evidence that it was sparked by the reaction to this video. And that is what we know thus far based on evidence, concrete evidence, close quote. Mr. Chairman, you know that in former life, I spent a little time in the courtroom. So when I hear the phrase concrete evidence, it means something to me. That's even stronger language than simply saying something is in fact. So 2 representatives of this administration gave demonstrably false statements, not just to us, but to our fellow citizens on national television. Now, is the explanation for those demonstrably false statements, as my colleague from Florida just asked, was it negligence? Was it just a reckless disregard for the truth? Or was it more nefarious than that? Mr. Chairman, the American people are reasonable. People understand investigations take time. People don't expect you to speculate until you have all the facts. What they will not forgive, Mr. Chairman, is being misled. We want our questions answered, and I want them answered by the people that went out before the American people and sought to mislead them by blaming this on a video when there is no evidence, concrete or otherwise, to support the assertions made by this administration. Mr. Chairman, I just had a conversation with Jason Chaffetz out back, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. He still gets emotional talking about what he saw in Libya. There were 4 brave Americans who died under circumstances that we can scarcely fathom. The terror, the fear, the anarchy of being killed in that fashion. They did what their country asked them to do. They stood post under dangerous circumstances even after requests for security were denied. They stood their post. The least we can do is stand this meager post that we've been assigned and demand that this administration speak the truth to the people it's supposed to serve. This was never about a video. It was never spontaneous. This is terror. And I want to know why we were lied to. And I yield back.
Oh, does that just break your heart or what? Well, you know, there's something that happened right after that. Now, because of all these falsehoods, because of the uproar that has come from this, then any other situation that arises like this, especially at one of our embassies overseas, in the Middle East especially, are not going to hit the news. Now, I heard a couple little tidbits about it on the news, but nowhere near the coverage that it should have got, of more proof that the media and our government is not telling us the truth. Because a Yemen security officer for the U.S. Embassy in Yemen was murdered in a drive-by shooting. And I'm going to give you this story straight from the AP. A drive-by shooting Thursday that killed a top Yemen security official who worked at the U.S. Embassy in Sana'a has raised concern that al-Qaeda militants here are bouncing back. They're getting bolder after suffering defeats this year in the Yemen military offensive. The U.S. Yemen military offensive. Did you even know that we had military on offensive in Yemen? No, because they don't tell you these things. You, the American people, are not smart enough to understand this. You're not a professional politician. Al-Qaeda in Yemen has carried out a string of assassinations of top security and military officials and deadly suicide bombings in recent months. Security officials said they believed it has a hit list to kill more than an attempt to paralyze Yemen's new leadership that was installed this year and throw the anti-Al-Qaeda assailants into turmoil. So they did a drive-by shooting. The new killing was also raised the possibility the group could turn its assassination campaign against American interest as well. The new group has sought to ride the recent wave of anger against the U.S. over, and here it is again, an anti-Islam film. Over an anti-Islam film by calling for attacks on Americans and other foreign diplomatic missions. We know it had nothing to do with the film, yet the film theory goes on. Yemen security officials said the attack was similar to previous assassinations by Al-Qaeda, although they said it was too early to confirm the group's involvement. The officials spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to talk to the press. There's increased concerns over security at American embassies and regional offices after last month's deadly attack by militants against the U.S. diplomatic mission in Benghazi that killed the U.S. ambassador to Libya and 3 other American protesters. Also stormed several U.S. embassies in Arab nations, including the one in Sana'a. And it goes on again to say, in outrage over the film about the Prophet Muhammad, the lie continues. An elite team of around 50 U.S. Marines sent to bolster security at Sana'a embassy after the September 13th attack was scheduled to leave the country later Thursday. Yemen officials said it was not clear whether the slaying would affect those plans. There was no sign of an increase of security around the embassy in Sana'a, which has already been heavily fortified with new protective measures amid the turmoil surrounding last year's uprising against then-President Abdul Salah. Security was tightened even more after the protesters stormed the compound last month. They claimed that they had climbed over the walls, damaged some buildings, and took down the U.S. flag before they were driven out by Yemen soldiers. Go back in my archives on the Blog Talk Radio Network and look at the Black Flag. Listen to the program of the Black Flag of Islam, the Black Flag of Jihad. This is what they do. They storm these places, they take our flag down, and they raise the Black Flag of Jihad. That means they have conquered through jihad. They say that all of the main roads leading to the embassy is sealed off by cement blocks and 3 checkpoints with limited access. Cars scanned for explosive. Yemen troops and armored vehicles stationed near the building. Officials say they believe it was not the anti-Islamic movie that led to Thursday's killing, which was a drive-by shooting of the security official at the Yemen embassy. They say a masked man on a motorcycle drove by, opened fire at whoever was standing out in front of the embassy. Security checks and cement blocks didn't make any difference when you're doing a drive-by. Washington considers the Yemen-based Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula to be the most dangerous offshoot of the terror network after it was linked to several attempted attacks on U.S. targets. Imagine that. Well, you know what? There's also the Muslim Brotherhood. I talk about the Muslim Brotherhood quite a bit because they are in the news. Remember, they were invited to the White House. Instead of meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, President Obama is shunning Israel and inviting the Muslim Brotherhood, who is vowing to take over Jerusalem and turn it, according to them, back to Arab hands, invites them to the White House for a nice dinner. Come to dinner at the White House, my brothers. That's what the White House is saying to the Muslim Brotherhood. Come on, my brothers, have dinner with me. Well, it turns out that the Muslim Brotherhood is now trying to use the Arab Spring in Jordan. Now, remember, we've talked about Jordan many times before. Who is Jordan? What is Jordan's roots? Jordan has a claim to the grandson of Lot. Now, do you remember after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's daughters each had a son. Each son became a king. Both of these sons were grandsons of Lot. One of these grandsons who became a king was named Moab. Look at a map of the Middle East and you'll see Moab is still there today. The other one was called the chief children of Ammon. Ammon, Jordan. That's Jordan's lineage to Abraham. Well, now the Brotherhood is trying to take over Jordan. Now, Jordan is not your average Middle Eastern country. You know, Jordan shares a huge border with Israel. This would completely surround Israel. On the north, Lebanon and Syria, Russia. At the east is Jordan, and at the south is Egypt. They would be completely surrounded. Well, October 5th, 2012, in front of the mosque in Amman with the biggest demonstration in Jordan since the Arab upspring began. For the time being, that is a piece of good news for the Jordanian opposition, maybe the only one, under the banner of, quote unquote, listen to this, save the nation. The organizers, mostly the Islamic Action Front, which encompasses the Muslim Brotherhood and some 70 different opposition groups, cannot be satisfied with 10,000 participants. Once they publicly raised the bar, working for weeks to hold a demonstration of 50,000 people in the spirit of the Egyptian Brotherhood, the various security agents judged in advance the inability of the organizers to mobilize 50,000 people. Now, at the counter, pro-government demonstrators was canceled. Prime Minister, I can't pronounce this guy's name, Fahaz Sarwah, who felt confident and safe enough to leave Amman the day before and meet Palestinian President in Ramallah. At the same time, if any internal political divides were expected from the visit, few could be collected. The Palestinian issue is most non-existent in the opposition's agenda. Now, King Abdullah II cannot enjoy the opposition's failure to reach the numerical target for long. Their major demands were sounded loud and clear from the center of Amman in front of the Hassani Mosque, as well as through all of the media channels that were not barred from reporting. A constitutional monarchy, a parliament elected in a fully democratic system, a genuine campaign against corruption, independence of the judicial system, and end of the involvement of the security agencies in political and civilian affairs. The most difficult demand is, of course, the electoral system and the powers of the king. The stalemate on this issue remains unresolved. King Abdullah is determined to proceed with his plan to hold general elections before the end of the year. Now, last week, he dissolved the parliament and voter registration continues, albeit at a slow pace, thus far reaching, according to government sources, 2/3 of those eligible, approximately 3 million people. The opposition, on the other hand, continues to boycott the planned elections. The regime and the opposition have held talks between Muslim Brotherhood leaders and political personalities who played a role in the governments in the past. Muslim Brotherhood and smaller opposition groups must now reassess their rally from last Friday because they failed to mobilize these 50,000 demonstrators. Now, calculations in two entirely different views here. On one hand, and judging by interviews they gave after the rally, they may decide that their power is not in the numbers, but in the quality of the message. So they say they're going to continue to boycott the elections until they squeeze more concessions out of the palace. Well, these may be in the form of some parliament deputy elections or national election rather than district level, or basically the Brotherhood's going to do the same thing that they did in Egypt. I'm going to go through this again. I've been through it before. I'm going to say it again. When Egypt first started their problems, what happened? The Muslim Brotherhood said that they had no plans of any political or military power. Then when they started elections for the parliament, the Muslim Brotherhood put candidates forward. Some of the people in the Muslim Brotherhood had split off out of the group and ran as independents. Even though they were still part of the Brotherhood, they didn't run officially as the Brotherhood. So they took over some 60% of parliamentary seats, both through the official banner of the Muslim Brotherhood and the members who had broke off and ran independently. Those two combined gave the Muslim Brotherhood over 60% of parliamentary seats. At that point, they said, that's all we plan on doing. We're not going to try for the presidency or anything like that. We're not going to do that, so don't worry about it. When the presidential elections came about, Muslim Brotherhood had a candidate right there. That was Morsi, the one who won, because they lied all the way through the process. It was all a hudna. It was a false contract. It was a lie, a deception to gain power or advantage, which is exactly what they do. According to their Quran, it's okay to do that. It's okay to lie, cheat, and steal if it gives you the advantage. And they claim this is a God? A God that tells you it's okay to lie, cheat, and steal if it gives you power and advantage? Really? Is that what you call a God? Well, that statement could cost me my head. Well, now they're doing the same thing, or trying to do the same thing in Jordan. Now, here's something funny about that. Since they're trying so hard to do this in Jordan, what does this mean for us, if anything? Well, let's take a look at this. I have a piece here that I want to share with you about, I'll bet you didn't know this either. The U.S. is sending troops to Jordan. Did you know that? Oh, you didn't see it on the news? Come to think of it, neither did I. The same as not knowing that we were on a military offensive in Yemen. Did you know that? No. Because the government has said to its cuddle buddy, the media, psst, don't say anything about this. Psst, shh, shh, don't say anything about this, okay? And of course the media said, okay. And they just pulled the covers up around their neck and they just cuddled some more. Well, we have troops now in Jordan. What's the real reason for sending troops to Jordan? Well, Wednesday, U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta announced that America was sending troops to Jordan. Why? The reasons offered by Panetta were tied to the latest escalation of violence between the rebels and the Assad regime in Syria. And he said that when he was speaking at a NATO conference in Brussels, not to anybody here. He said the security of Syria's stock of chemical weapons is why our troops are in Jordan. And, that may be part of the reason. He also says there's a rising number of refugees fleeing Syria moving across the border into Jordan, and that they were there to build a local headquarters for our troops in the region. Oh, for our troops in the region. Because we don't have any other troops in that region, right? We don't have any troops in Israel or Iran or Iraq or Afghanistan or Yemen. We now need to go to Jordan so that we have troops in the region because they think we're too stupid to figure this out. He also said that something sparked a question about the possibility of other reasons behind the need to have American troops in Jordan. He said, we have a group of our forces that are working to help build a headquarters there to ensure that we make the relationship between the U.S. and Jordan a strong one so that we can deal with all of the possible consequences of what's happening in Syria. Here's the phrase that caught my ear: to ensure that we make the relationship between the United States and Jordan a strong one. The need for a solid connection to Jordan may be better illustrated by looking at what our country is doing in the region, or where Jordan sits in the region. Jordan is not a country with energy reserves like all of our neighbors, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, or Egypt. The U.S. has been financially supporting Jordan for years. Last July, it was reported that Washington promised $100 million in aid to assist Jordan with the flood of Syrian refugees. $100 million of transfer of American wealth. Jordan has been averaging $450 million a year of U.S. aid for a long time. Where's that money coming from? It's coming from your paycheck every week. A huge transfer of wealth. So why are we sending troops to Jordan? Why now? There's been unrest there for how long? Months. Is our money not enough to stabilize the regime? Could the answer be something different than the one being offered by Panetta? A lot of outlets are reporting that Jordan's government's now being pressured by the Muslim Brotherhood more than ever. ABC News in Australia claims the Muslim Brotherhood has pressured the king to dissolve the parliament. Plus, you have Jordan's nagging economic problems, worsened by the influx of refugees from Syria and the loss of needed gas supplies from Egypt. Why do they have a loss of gas supplies from Egypt? Because it's the Muslim Brotherhood. They're choking them. Qatar and German news outlets call Jordan a small kingdom with big problems. In their September 29th story, here's what they said in the newspapers, in the media, in German news outlets. They said, despite the king's far-reaching political powers, this popular support has been strengthened by the Brotherhood's determination to gain political influence and achieve fundamental constitutional reforms. What does the Muslim Brotherhood have to do with Jordan at all? It now intends to boycott the preliminary elections planned for the end of the year. It seems as if the Muslim Brotherhood is attempting to stage its own little Jordanian spring, just like like they've done everywhere else. Russia Today pointed out the influence being brought to bear on Jordan's king from the Muslim Brotherhood in an article titled Arab Monarchies. Muslim Brotherhood, source of all problems in the Islamic world. Well, not just in the Islamic world, my friends. The Muslim Brotherhood's influence that they're pushing is very influential. Why are they so bold? They're so bold because so far, everywhere that they have tried to take over, the U.S. has been right there to, if not support them, enable them by continuing to give them support, even when they kill our ambassadors, and we still support them. We still encourage them. We still enable them, because our government is part of this through the UN, this one world government. My friends, make no mistake about any of this, that the pressure on King Abdullah from the Muslim Brotherhood, their latest post in the Jordan media, it's called Jordan, a Kingdom on the Brink. Muslim Brotherhood mobilized for King Abdullah's overthrow. Debka wondered which side America's leaders was supporting Jordan. Obama has a balancing act to resolve. On one hand, the Jordanian king has been a long, staunch American ally and friend. Its mainstay in regional crisis. On the other hand, Obama regards the Muslim Brotherhood as the external policy and the outreach in the Muslim world. How are you going to vote? Are you going to vote? Look, let me just say this. We're almost out of time. You need to vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. Frankly, my personal opinion, I don't want either one of these yahoos. I don't want Obama or Romney. I think they're both a bad choice. But it's like I've said many times before. I think that our leaders are not elected. They're selected. I think this is predetermined. I think that God's prophecy is coming to pass no matter what we say. I'm just trying to make you aware of it. I'm trying to make you aware of what's going on so you can see that the Bible is a credible source of information for the times we're in. If you want to know what's going on, what the end result of all of this is going to be, if you want to see the process in written word, open your Bible. Go through Ezekiel and Daniel and Matthew and Luke and Revelation. Go through those books. Pay attention to the end time prophecies. Go through those things and form a picture in your mind of what all of these things are saying, and look at what's going on now. These are unprecedented times in the world. Be aware. Just be aware. Now, for those of you who are Christian, we're just watching it unfold. For those of you who are not, and you're confused, don't know what's going on, open the Bible. You don't even need to be a Christian to be able to see what the Bible says and what's going on right now, to understand how all of this is working. All right, I only have a couple minutes left. I want to play this song by, before we go, I want to play this song by Georgia Red. Georgia Red! John, thank you so much for this song. I don't, when I talked to John, Georgia Red, I had to agree with him. I asked him about this song and his inspiration for it, and he said that he really thought this was going to be much bigger than what it turned out to be, and I have to agree. This song says it all. I'm going to play it for you right now. This is our friend Georgia Red.